use Teams. Jen Villanueva is going to support us throughout our next 9 meetings. If you are having technical difficulties or you need to call in or you lost the link to the meet, I don't know, whatever you might need help with, Jen is a very good person to know and to contact. And in our follow-up email, we'll be able to give you her email very clearly. Jen, would you go through Teams?
Hello, good morning, everybody. Before we start, here's a quick overview of Microsoft Teams to help us navigate the meeting smoothly. The chat option, you have to send messages to everyone. You're unable to send a private message directly to Elizabeth, for example. The raise hand option, if you have a question or you want to speak, click on the hand. And once you finish your question or your comment, please click on the hand again to remove the hand signal. The Microsoft button allows you to mute and unmute yourself. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking to reduce background noise. You can also react to comments with the emojis. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jen. And we will be using the raise hand function for our meetings and discussions. So please feel free to practice that. Yes.
Can I just get a clarification? Yes. Jen, did you say that we won't be able to send just an individual email? Like, for example, if somebody was having trouble with chat and they wanted to just talk to you, is that something you can do?
So in the meeting, if you send a chat, it will ping everybody, but you can always send me a personal email or direct send me a message by clicking on my account. Usually my Teams should show up and give you the option to message me. Or I could also provide my email in the chat if that's easier for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not seeing exactly how to do that through the chat function, but maybe if you just put your email in the chat, that would be helpful for folks.
Yeah, you have to do that through Outlook, if that's what you use.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so before we get to Kathy's welcome and introducing ourselves, we are going to just run through the group agreements. And I raised my hand for some really odd reason. And now I need to go backwards. And what is going on? Have I stopped sharing my screen now?
Yes.
I'm doing all sorts of things right now. What's going on? That's so great. Okay. Bear with me while I hit wrong buttons. Oh, of course, I was on the right. That's funny. I was on the right screen. Okay. I did want to run through our agenda so that you knew what to expect. So we're doing our housekeeping right now, and it's going somewhat smoothly. And then Kathy will give us a welcome, and we'll go through the group and do introductions. And Kathy will continue to explain about the commission. And then I will launch into our work today and who we are, who the climate action team is at ODO, and the advisory committee's role. And starting about 10:30, we have a guest, Elizabeth Elbel from DEQ, will go through the inventory, the sector-based emissions inventory that, or some highlights of that DEQ tracks. And then Jason Sauer, my colleague, will talk about inventories, the Natural Working Lands Inventory and kind of basics 101. We'll have some question and answer periods, and we'll have a whiteboard exercise to go through some questions together, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so you all prepared very well. And you have read the group agreements, but I wanted to spend some time and just highlight and make sure that we agreed together. It's a time to also practice your emojis, a thumbs up or hands raised if you weren't clear. And so preparing before each meeting will be fantastic. We have a preparation part of the agenda up at the top. Each agenda will have that section, and you'll know what you need to prepare for. We have 9 meetings together, so we're asking that you try not to miss more than 3. We will be kind of tracking attendance just to understand who is with us and what kind of feedback we're getting. If possible, to just silence your phone and your email notifications. It's so distracting on virtual meetings and it's easy to get off track. And as you are already practicing, you have your video on and your microphone's muted. Thank you. And then lastly, just really wanted to highlight that these are meetings in the state agency world, which means that they are public record, meaning that if someone from the public wanted to public records request our meetings, they could. We will be recording the meeting so that people that do miss the meeting can watch the group's recording and understand the information presented. But recording will be stopped during discussion, Q&A. Meeting summaries will coalesce the issues, but they will not be assigned to individuals. Can I see a emoji use with thumbs up and or hands raised? While we're doing introductions, if you do have other ideas about the group agreements, this is a great one that occurred in this other meeting I was a part of. Thank you so much for the thumbs up. Please feel free to put that in the chat and we can consider that and bring it up in next meeting if that's something the group wants to agree to. So cool. Any questions on that? No. Okay, great. Great, Kathy, I'm going to hand it to you. Take it away.
I'm going to unmute myself.
Awesome.
So, excuse me. Super excited to have all of you advising the commission. And I'll get into a little bit more about the commission in a future slide. But we have been working on natural and working lands and increasing sequestration ideas since our inception, and in particular following direction from Governor Brown in 2020. And the work that you all will be contributing to is really designed to advance some of what we identified as foundational elements of our natural and working lands proposal. And we do, again, I don't want to, there's a future slide about the commission, but, having this advisory committee just to expand our perspective, the commission's perspective, is really helpful and informative. And so this is a very important group that can help the staff and the commission start to shape ideas that we have, the deliverables that we have, as well as follow-on ideas for how to accelerate adoption of climate smart practices. So with that, I just will invite you, and maybe Liz, you can kind of curate this. But if we could just go through a process of having folks identify themselves and your affiliation, if applicable, and then just briefly, a very brief statement about what motivated you to serve on this group. So I can go across my my screen, but I know sometimes the people jump around on screens. So Liz, if you can kind of help to make sure who's spoken and who hasn't. So go ahead and start with Ellen. You are first on my screen.
Okay, hi, I'm Ellen Hammond. I'm with the Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District, which is centered around Madras. And I was motivated because my area is severely suffering from drought, and our working lands are not being managed the way they could be for maximum health, because landowners are having major economic issues We have incredibly highly productive croplands and also rangelands. And I strongly supported the soil health bill that was going through the legislature in the same session. It did not pass, but this one did. So I am very interested in seeing how this moves forward. Also, I worked for the Oregon Department of Agriculture in their water quality program for almost 25 years. So I'm familiar with the working lands across the state and have a soft spot in my heart for all of them.
That's great, Ellen. We're lucky to have you and the perspectives that you bring. Thank you. Mike McCarthy.
Hi there. I'm gonna leave my camera off. My reception is better, seems like, out here in the boonies. I farm in Parkdale. I raise apples, pears, cherries, cows, and manage forest land. I've been involved in agriculture in Oregon for 60 years now. I've tried about everything at least once. I have a nonprofit called Ag for Oregon, which is a land use organization. I have a small land trust called Parkdale Valley Land Trust. I'm on the board of the state board of the Oregon Farm Bureau. And I also am involved in a local land use organization here in Hood River County. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Betsy.
Good morning, I'm Betsy Earls and I work at Weyerhaeuser Company. I'm the Oregon Government Affairs Manager and also Montana, which is not pertinent for this conversation. We own and manage about 1.5 million acres of timberland in Oregon. Conservation and carbon discussions are one of the most important topics on our minds in Oregon right now. And so we're excited to be part of this committee and this conversation.
Thank you, Betsy. We really appreciate having you on the group. And I think you've been I think Weyerhaeuser has been involved in some similar conversations in Washington. So really appreciate what you might bring to us from some of those discussions. Aubrey Spear.
Yeah, hey everybody. It's great to be here with you all today. My name is Aubrey Spear. I've been working with Sustainable Northwest as their regenerative ranching program manager. We support producers all across the West to adopt different regenerative ranching practices and implement landscape scale restoration projects. As of lately, we've been doing a lot of climate smart beef product work, just around the climate smart, product, and then carbon emissions and sequestration and everything in that realm. So I'm excited to broaden that work with this group. And yeah, it's great to be here with you all today.
Great. Thank you. Glad to have you on board. Ben.
Good morning, Ben Hayes, and I kind of wear two hats. One is with Hyla Woods, which is our family business, and one is Springboard Forestry, which is my management business. We manage mostly for municipal and conservation landowners, and often in that kind of 1,000 to 5,000 acre range. And then with our family business, the family's owned land in Oregon and Washington since the late 1800s. We currently have land in Northwest Oregon. And I was involved in the 2022-2023 advisory committee. So I was really interested in seeing kind of how this conversation has continued and how we can contribute to it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And just, I don't think I mentioned it in my preliminary remarks, but we did have a grant-funded project that the Institute for Natural Resources helped us with, and we had an advisory committee, and a number of people that are on this committee served on that original one as well. Andrea.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Andrea Kreiner. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts. And the SWCDs, we're the boots on the ground working with landowners and managers on implementing a lot of projects on the farm that both result in carbon sequestration and sometimes carbon mitigation.
Thank you, Andrea. Your network of implementers is a really important part of how we get this work done in Oregon. So it's great to have you on board. Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone. Jocelyn Bridson. I'm the Director of Environment and Community Impact at Tillamook County Creamery Association, the farmer-owned dairy co-op. I'm based in Washington County, but 50 of our farmer members live in Tillamook area. I'm interested in working with this, motivated just to share my knowledge. I've worked at Tillamook for about 5 years, leading both environmental and community-related projects. We do a full greenhouse gas footprint according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. I'm a certified crop advisor. And prior to Tillamook, I was in California, where I worked 9 years at a large-scale vegetable farm. And I also served on CDFA's Science Advisory Panel, which helped roll out California's Healthy Soils programs. So I'm just motivated really to give back to Oregon and hopefully, ensure that farmers understand that they are part of this solution. And as you mentioned, this is a foundational time and a critical time for us to work together. So happy to be here.
Jocelyn was also on the previous advisory committee. So welcome back. It's great to have you. Really appreciate it. Megan.
Megan Temple, Executive Director with Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network. I have been engaged on the previous Natural and Working Lands Advisory Council Committee, and I'm really engaged with the Natural Climate Solutions Coalition, primarily focused on implementation of the Natural and Working Lands Fund, but I've been staying informed with all of these pieces, and I'm super committed to helping to make sure that Oregon's farmers and ranchers are part of the solution to the problem of our changing climate.
Thank you, Megan. Welcome back as well. Dean, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Kathy. I'm Dean Moberg, former long time ago farm worker in California, Illinois, upstate New York, then worked for NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, for about 35 years in Pendleton, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then Northwest Oregon. I retired and then was elected to the board of the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, which is Washington County. Also have a very small consulting business where I'm working with farmers on soil health and transition to Oregon, including some work I'm doing with Oregon Tilth. And I'm sort of the token non-forester on a group here in Washington County that's working on climate smart forestry guidelines for our watershed here. Climate change is, I don't have to tell you all, the most important natural resources challenge that we've got. And having worked with farmers, ranchers, foresters for, a long time, 50 some years, very excited to be here and honored to be part of this group. Just some great people here. So thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Dean. And the Tualatin SWCD is, I was going to say kick-ass. SWCD. Maybe I can say that. Just blank that out. Anyway, it's really great to have you here, and certainly know of all the great work you did through NRCS. So welcome aboard. Jonathan, you're on mute, Jonathan.
Not anymore. Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Saul. I'm the Science and Stewardship Division Manager at the Metro Regional Government Parks and Nature Program. We manage a portfolio of about 19,000 acres of nature parks and natural areas. And within that work, of course, well, the mission is enhancing wildlife habitat, water quality, and providing access to nature for people in our community and from beyond. But within that work, we're keenly attuned to the threat of climate change and trying to integrate climate mitigation work into our land management practices. And part of our portfolio is lands we have not yet been able to restore to natural habitat and are in farm leases. So we have some overlap with the farm component. And I'm a naturally curious person, and so I'm both here to contribute my ecological perspective on this work. I have more than a decade of experience on the east side of the mountains, as well as multiple decades on the west side. So I have a pretty nice perspective on ecosystem function and process in Oregon, and but also excited to learn from so many smart people and together do better for Oregon. So thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Lauren.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone. Lauren Link, State Policy Advisor with the Nature Conservancy here in Oregon. I don't know if people are familiar with the Nature Conservancy, but we're a global nonprofit working to address challenges and find solutions to both the climate crisis and biodiversity loss. And in particular, the Nature Conservancy has served on the previous advisory board. That was not me, though. I'm pretty new to this work, but excited to be here. I'd also say I help lead the Natural Climate Solutions Coalition. So as Megan spoke to, we've been really focused on the implementation of the Natural Working Lands Fund, but excited to dig a bit more into what we're going to talk about here. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Going down my list, Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here with you. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this committee. I work for the Pew Charitable Trust, which, if you're not familiar, is a large nonprofit. Within Pew, I work for a team called U.S. Conservation, which basically, in a nutshell, aims to advance plans and policies that account for climate change. And also builds a more adaptable environment for people and nature. And within that kind of broader team, I work specifically on elevating wetland habitats and state climate planning efforts. I guess my motivation for being here is twofold. I really appreciate wetlands, and so I'm excited to kind of, dig in a little bit more, as well as, for those of you who don't know, wetlands are great at sequestering carbon. So I think that role in natural climate solutions my expertise in that will play well for this committee. So I'm excited to work with you all. Thank you.
Welcome. It's great to have you on board. And that is a super important area of work. A lot of bang for the buck on per acre from our coastal wetlands. Jason.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Callahan. I work for the Green Diamond Resource Company. We're a 6th-generation family-owned forest products company. Nationally, we own 2.2 million acres across 9 states. Specifically in Oregon, we own about 600,000 acres down in Klamath, Lake, and Jackson counties. Carbon is of interest to Green Diamond for a number of levels. One, we have 628,000 and counting acres nationally of our acres enrolled in various carbon projects, both regulatory and voluntary. Many of those are in our Klamath and Lake County holdings. We also lost about a quarter of our Oregon holdings during the bootleg fire a few summers ago. So both wildfire opportunity and wildfire risk is high on the list of things we care and think about at Green Diamond, which is why I'm here and why my company supports me to do this. I might not bring a lot of the expertise directly, but we have a lot of people in the company who do this stuff full time, and I'm happy to sort of be a conduit to that information and process what I know and bring it back to the group. Jason,
we're so lucky to have you. So welcome. I think that's everyone. Did I miss anybody, Liz, from the commission? I know Elizabeth joined us, which we'll have her introduce herself in a minute, but did I miss anybody who's on the advisory committee?
I don't think so. Speak now if you have, because I'm not seeing you either. So, okay, great. Thank you, everyone. That's so tremendous. As you can see from, just add Kathy before we continue, that is, you can see from everyone's introductions, there's a breadth of knowledge crossing the natural working land sector. So although you were selected for specific positions that were listed in statute, we will be encouraging conversation across sectors between you all. You have so much breadth of knowledge to provide. So thank you. I'm going to share my screen again. And Kathy, a little bit about the Climate Action Commission is
Yeah.
is next.
So the Climate Action Commission was originally established by the legislature in 2007 as the Oregon Global Warming Commission. And even in that original legislation, we had a natural and working lands component to our charge. At the time, it was focused on forests, but it has been work that's been with us since the beginning in 2007. Originally, our primary charge was to produce a biennial report to the legislature in the governor's office that tracked progress towards a set of sector-based climate mitigation goals that were also established as part of that legislation. And then to make recommendations for changes in policies and programs to help us get on track if we're not on track, or to stay on track if we are on track towards our emission reduction goals. And then we also have an education role to not only talk and educate folks about climate mitigation and the need for that, but also kind of the risks of climate impacts and the need for climate action. So we have those three primary, broad, high-level responsibilities. In 2023, the legislature modernized and renamed the Global Warming Commission to the Climate Action Commission, and it expanded our membership. We are a somewhat unusual commission. We have 35 members, and we don't direct any individual agency. We are really a meeting place to bring issues and ideas together and come up with considerations and recommendations about how to resolve those issues. So we have an expanded membership. We added fisheries, youth, and environmental justice to our voting membership. We added a number of new agencies to our non-voting members, and so we have a really awesome group of people that can come together and help think about those issues. ODO supports the commission, and you're going to hear more from Liz in a minute about that support. And then we'll circle back to kind of the role of this advisory committee in relationship to some of the deliverables that we have. Back to you, Liz.
Great, thank you. Right, so Kathy mentioned that ODO supports the commission, and ODO's mission formally is to help support informed decision-making to maintain a resilient and affordable energy system and advance an equitable clean energy transition. And the agency works to achieve that mission by collecting and sharing data, producing analyses and educating policymakers and the public, overseeing energy facility siting, and administering incentives and other programs. And ODO also, right, mentioned thrice now that we support the commission. And it is the climate action team that supports the commission. And I really like to use this bathtub figure to explain the areas of climate action that our team works in. So if we imagine the world sitting in a bathtub of carbon, the faucet of emissions has been filling the tub faster than natural earth systems can sequester it. In this figure, natural sequestration is depicted as the drain. And over the last couple centuries, not only have our emissions increased from the faucet, circled in yellow, but we have compromised the natural processes that comprise the drain through various actions like development or habitat degradation. So essentially, the size of the drain has gotten smaller. So Natural Climate Solutions staff on the Climate Action team are coordinating, conducting the work with the Commission and in partnership with land managing agencies to first understand the size of the drain by completing the Natural Working Lands Inventory, and providing recommendations on actions we can take to increase Oregon's land function where possible and to sequester carbon in ecosystems and soil, alongside the other important and critical functions and services that natural working lands provide. So our work is not to entirely focus on carbon sequestration, but to understand and make sure this is in context of all the co-benefits that natural and working lands provide. So through state and federally directed programs and funding, our other teammates are working to reduce carbon emissions coming from the faucet, if you will. The teammates that did not introduce themselves but are on this call today, my team lead, Amy Schlesser, is with us, and that our manager, Ellen Zelenka, is listening in too, and you'll have a chance to hear Jason Sauer, my colleague, speak in just a little bit.
Yeah, just, well, I like the distinction of natural climate solutions as a way to increase sequestration. The land sector can also produce emissions, so we have to think about both sides and think about it as the net result from the land sector.
That's very true. So we'll have lots of time to talk about that in our work together. Yes. So wanting to hit a little bit on how the relationship of the committee relates to the commission and Odo, Odo's climate action team. First, Odo, right, is directed in statute also to provide support for this committee as well as the commission. In addition to our support role, Jason and myself were hired to provide state technical support on this topic and conduct the work associated with commission deliverables. And as our team gets established, there will be more opportunity for you to engage us directly in your other projects or capacities outside of this committee's work. And we are just 5 months into this position and excited to provide the technical support for the state and stakeholders in this way. This committee will provide, of course, the deep knowledge in the natural and working land space to the commission in Odo. The opportunity for formalizing the committee was directed in HB 3409, and the benefits of a committee like this are numerous. And I think to highlight important roles for the natural and working land sector work that we'll be doing, integrating people from different backgrounds and different expertises in the sectors is critical and a really important aspect of this work. And I think too that we, as professionals, we work in our fields and we don't necessarily have a lot of cross-talk, which and so hopefully we'll have increased trust as we develop relationship with each other too. So really excited about that element of this group. The commission, of course, receives and considers the feedback from the committee, and wanted to note that there may be some commission members invited to join and listen into the discussion from time to time, and they will report back to the commission on what's discussed. And of course, the chair, Kathy, is here for all of the meetings. So just to be very clear, and so that everyone understands the roles of advisory committees, and in this one in particular, right? You are with us to advise the commission. That's actually statutory directed. So advising the commission on all their work related to the sections of the statute that relate to natural climate solutions. In this advisory capacity, the committee's role is to engage with draft work products, discussion topics, provide feedback, illuminate and share ideas or challenges, or offer solutions. The committee will not be working to reach consensus. We won't be voting, and we won't be making any final decisions. The committee is critical to project success and all the deliverables that we're going to be working through together. But also we'll be hearing from many other voices as well that will inform the work, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Maybe on the next slide, if not the next slide. So there are kind of four major deliverables described in HB 3409 that will shape our work together. You've heard of 3 of these a lot. So in the solicitation for your applications and in your invitation to the committee, we kind of highlight the 3 areas as being first, creating a natural and working lands inventory, which calculates the net carbon gains and losses from the landscape and ecosystems. And Jason will talk about more about that today. And then in a natural climate solutions workforce study, so assessing Oregon's capacity and needs to deploy a workforce to implement natural climate solutions and increase carbon sequestration or avoid landscape emissions on the land. And thirdly, creating recommendations and assessing how to track natural climate solutions and contributions toward increasing sequestration, their co-benefits and effects on communities. So those are the deep work that we'll do together, and all of that work comes together to inform the Commission's work on establishing non-binding carbon sequestration goals. So this is another way to look at all that work. On this slide, you can see our meeting dates across the top, our monthly meeting dates. The work will look something like this. Our formalized and final agendas are yet to be set. We have 2 meetings available for us for education topics, one of them being today. Starting in May, we'll have a couple of contractors on board. We do have 2 active RFPs out right now, and happy to share those links with the committee after the meeting. Some of these interactions are even statutorily directed. So, for example, the inventory must be brought to the advisory committee for input before it's finalized. So we have asked the inventory contractor in the RFP and the blue project in their table to first share the approach and of the work, and then come back and share a draft of what they did, so that there'll be feedback opportunities in the beginning and the end. Jason will discuss a little bit more about the inventory and kind of what's in the RFP later. The due dates for this work are across the top. So we have due dates in September, October, and December. Our timelines are ambitious, and we recognize that. There are various tasks and engagements that we'll be working through for the Workforce Project and the Metrics Project. We'll be talking about that in depth at other meetings, but wanted to show you kind of like the whole enchilada. So talked about kind of the feedback and input structure, mentioned there are other groups that we'll be working with. We're working with those other groups because some of them are also statutorily directed HB 3409, but also it's common for state agency practice to look public comment periods, consult with tribal nations. So this is kind of just a draft kind of structure that I drew up, and you can see the projects on the left-hand side. The contractors associated with each of those projects will be engaging with our interagency working group, which is comprised of 7 state agencies that manage lands in Oregon. You guys, and of course, public comment periods as they're offered through ODO and or the commission. That all goes into the work products, and of course, the commission and ODO receive those products and have input as well. I think that is all. So HB 3409 also directs us to engage with tribal nations on these deliverables, but also to engage them on a process to advise the commission over time. So as this work continues, we'll be working with tribal nations to co-develop what that might be, what makes sense to have a relationship with the commission and advise on natural climate solutions. That does not have a timeline, but that is a parallel effort that we're working on. Okay, so I think we are.
Liz, do we want to ask for any questions on the charge before we get to the broader question Q&A? I just think it might be more present, but happy to defer that if you'd rather.
Sure. I think we could take questions right now on this segment. I think we and then Elizabeth and Jason will speak, and we can have another mini little question and answer. Yep, sure. Let's check in. Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. From the chart, maybe I didn't read it right, but it looked like our work was through this calendar year. Is that right? Or do we end at the end of 2025?
We do not end. But we do have kind of deliverables that we need to deliver by a certain date via statute. So those were reflected. The inventory will get updated every other even year, and so there will be continued work to improve that inventory over time. There's actually a lot to discuss there as we move through time. And then also, I imagine other projects that this committee will take up after we get through like our very first charge in 2025.
Yeah,
okay,
just
good.
To briefly add, you know, we're doing a lot of the very foundational pieces right now. One of the things when we were developing the Natural and Working Lands proposal, we got a lot of input from landowners and technical assistance providers and about things that would incentivize adoption of new practices. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to move from some of these foundational pieces onto additional topics that could come back and inform recommendations that we would make to the legislature.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it didn't seem like a year was enough, so thank you.
Dean, it's a life sentence.
But there are terms.
There are terms. Okay, Jocelyn?
Yeah, you mentioned materials available for the public. Are you going to share the link, the website link for those materials? And then the second question is, will there be meeting notes, or is it just the live videos that are recorded in the presentations?
There will be meeting notes, and we can share those out. We'll also share out the recording. All of the work will be public, when it gets final published. You guys will see draft pieces of work so that we can work together. You had a third part of your question.
Just what website it might be housed at.
Oh, right. And so we are a little behind on setting up a website where you are all listed with some small bios and where you can go for products and materials over time. So we'll be setting that up.
It will be on the commission's website. It'll be a landing page there. Is that right, Liz?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ben.
Yeah, I'm curious that in the original description and some of the materials, there's quite a bit about the Natural and Working Lands Fund and reporting on that. And I'm curious if that plays a role in this first year or kind of how that might be integrated going forward.
Kathy, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. We do anticipate, we are hopeful that we'll get another 5 million, and certainly, input from the work that this committee will be advising on will help influence how we spend the next pots of money. We may need to go a little faster than the committee might be able to provide input on this round of funding. But that's certainly, Liz, something we might want to put on the agenda for our next meeting to talk about that as we go forward. But yeah, definitely, totally part of I think the body of work that this advisory committee is intended to inform.
Thank you, Megan.
I think the recordings will be posted on that webpage. Liz, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I was thinking. It's like yes. So yes, and we decided not to record discussions. So I was thinking of everyone's safe space here and privacy, and so I was thinking through yes.
At least the presentation.
I think we can do that. Yeah.
Might have other staff at our organization view some of them, so other folks are informed about what we're doing and can support them. Thank you.
And I will say, if you miss a meeting, hopefully you'll be able to listen into the recordings, but also I hope I'm not stepping beyond my bounds on this, but I think staff would also be happy to kind of give you some more of the context one-on-one if you have to miss a meeting, because we understand that people are going to have to miss meetings, so we're happy to catch you up and give you a little more of the context of some of the discussions where there might have been some things that weren't captured in the presentations, but were more reflective of the discussion that the committee had.
Lauren?
Yeah, I had a question. It wasn't necessarily touched upon, but when looking at the charter, I was looking at the environmental justice seat is still vacant, and I was just kind of curious if there was a timeline still for filling that seat, or as we're moving forward, and if there were any ways that committee members could provide input or help with that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So that is, and I forgot to mention it. And so it would be really great to actually use the committee members' help in this. We were had a lot of trouble trying to fill the seat, and recently secured sponsorship to be able to compensate that seat on this committee. And so excited about that. And so that's all come together in the last couple weeks. And so I have drawn up some email language that people can share out to their networks, and perhaps this committee could share out emails with their network or people that might fill that seat. We're specifically interested in environmental justice community members that, which includes almost everyone, really, rural, climate vulnerable communities, urban vulnerable communities, members that either have lived or learned experience in access to lands, impacts from reduced access to land, impacts from urban living without urban tree cover or park space. The gamut, if you could think of how vulnerable communities might be impacted. So we'll share out that language and a little bit more direction about that. It would be really great to have your help.
Yeah, we really have worked hard at that. That's in part why we delayed the first meeting as long as we did, because we were really trying to fill that seat. The other thing, Liz, that we haven't mentioned yet is we do have another advisory committee member who wasn't able to join us today, who brings tribal expertise to the discussion.
That's right. Thank you, Kathy. Betsy? And then I think we'll need to move on.
Did you say you're compensating that seat?
Yes, we're able to compensate that seat.
And why are you compensating that seat?
In order to provide compensation for most of the people on this meeting are with organizations that can provide their time for this effort. And we recognized that some representatives that might be able to provide us their expertise or lived or learned experience may not have that kind of same support from their organizations. Soft money sometimes, if they're with an NGO, for example, it's like specifically to a granted project. This is not a granted project, and so
I see.
Wanted to be able
sense.
to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I chime in? If you can send the description, that would be helpful.
Yes.
For example, could they be a representative of that community, but also be a farmer? I wasn't sure your comment was about a nonprofit leader, but that would be good for us to do some outreach.
Yeah, we'll make a comprehensive list.
Jocelyn, to your point, most of all of you bring multiple. We could have checked a number of boxes on the list of requirements for who should sit on the advisory committee. So everybody brings a mix, and it would be great to have folks that have, that broader or have multiple expertise that they can bring.
And they could be from the farming community or the forest or yes. So we'll kind of make clear in our description who we might be looking for. Okay, that's an excellent question. Thank you everyone for asking those really fabulous questions. Okay, I would like to invite Elizabeth to introduce yourself and to share with us. Elizabeth, do you have slides you'd like to share?
I do have a few very high level slides.
Okay, that's great. I will stop sharing.
Okay, and I can start sharing here. Maybe I'll introduce myself first. I'm Elizabeth Elbell. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at the Office of Greenhouse Gas Programs at DEQ. And my specific role is to implement the greenhouse gas reporting program. So I manage a team that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that program in a bit. And then also to compile the statewide sector-based inventory. And I've been in this role for about 10 years. So I wasn't around when it was originated, so I have to dig up that history. But I have seen some, conversations over the years, and particularly around forestry. And so it's very exciting to see this work advance and to see you all here. I know that it's a lot of time and energy and brain power to think through these complex issues, and there's a lot of considerations. So I just want to express my appreciation for people thinking about this stuff for Oregon.
I'll just thank Elizabeth because she's been awesome in helping to bring some of her expertise on the sector-based emissions into the natural and working land space, and has attended U.S. Climate Alliance Natural and Working Lands Laboratory meetings, and is just a great partner in this effort. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, I am happy to support you all. And I guess maybe to frame it up, so the sector-based inventory is, everything but the natural working lands. And so I think to inform your work, it's helpful to know what's sitting in this other space. And what I have today is pretty high level, but, a part of our goals as an agency and our office is to just share information and inform folks. So if things come up or questions come up, especially in the weeds, we're always here to kind of literally walk you through what we know about it. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. And it sounds like, I think when I saw on the agenda, we're going to do questions at the end. So I'll try and do that. But if you want to, I'm more conversational, so happy to just do it however feels comfortable. Okay. So today I'll be talking about what we call the sector-based inventory, and I'll describe a little bit more about the scope and the history around that so that you have an idea of what that is and kind of the history of it. See, we did an intro. So I'm guessing that you guys are all here because you think inventories are important, but to just kind of talk about why do we even collect data and track it? A lot of it, and a lot of the original impetus for Oregon to do this work was to just kind of have a shared understanding of baseline of where we're at, and then to track progress towards goals. And you kind of need this information to even establish a goal in the first place. We also use this data, so as much as you can disaggregate it, to inform us about different sectors of emissions. And when you have that information, then you can start making decisions about mitigation or programs and policies to make impacts in those sectors. You can prioritize what those actions are, and you can look at maybe stakeholders or other folks that are impacted by those actions, or maybe the ones that are producing those emissions. So the data is really foundational in that space. We also use our sector-based data to inform projections. So that helps us think out past just like the inventory, which is the actuals here and now, versus looking into the future. What do we think is going to happen? Is that what we want to happen? And if not, what are we going to do about it? How do we have those conversations? How do we plan? It's a really important piece because when it comes to climate mitigation, and of course in the natural working lands, some of these solutions take a very long time to implement. And so we need to be able to have that kind of forward-looking information to inform what we do now to really have that impact when it needs to happen. So Oregon does inventory greenhouse gas emissions in a couple different ways. The sector-based inventory has kind of been the longest standing inventory. It's the most similar, I would say, to like our national inventory at the EPA level, although there are some differences. The original scope of the sector-based inventory was kind of established back when the original Oregon Global Warming Commission was developed through conversations with other states. And it was a lot of it was foundational for looking at if Oregon did like a cap and trade approach or things like that. So that framework is a little bit helpful in understanding the scope there. We also have what is called a consumption-based inventory, which is kind of like a newer or more innovative way of looking at emissions. That's not something I'm going to talk about today, but I do bring that up just to share that Oregon doesn't have just this one inventory. And so kind of breaking things out and looking at things from different perspectives, as well as having this natural working lands inventory, helps us kind of identify these different areas of emissions and mitigations and strategies. And I think, when we talk about the sector-based inventory, it's largely looking at kind of our anthropogenic emissions from combustion energy use. The strategies in that space look very different than strategies in your natural working land space, right? And there are different considerations. And so being able to kind of look at those separately adds a lot of value, I think, in terms of how we approach Oregon's kind of plan for tracking, managing, and mitigating carbon. So I do have this image over here on the right, and so the consumption-based emissions really look at emissions outside of Oregon that we kind of drive by what we consume and do here. That's not in the scope of our sector-based inventory. What we're really looking at with this inventory today is going to be that green and orange piece. So I'll talk about that in detail next. So with every inventory, you have a scope, what's in and what's out. You need to kind of define that to make sure that you can track it over time. So the sector-based inventory for Oregon includes all of our anthropogenic, so that's like the man-made fossil emissions that are produced within Oregon by economic sector. So those are going to be your transportation, residential, commercial, industrial emissions, and we also have agriculture. And those are emissions that are physically occurring here. So when you turn on your natural gas water boiler or something like that, those emissions are included. But emissions outside of the state are not, with the exception of the electricity sector, where Oregon uses a consumption-based accounting approach, meaning that we look at the emissions associated with the electricity used in Oregon, regardless of where it's generated. And we have a large portion of our power that we actually import from other states where they may be combusting fossil fuels to generate that power to serve our load. So that's
That's
Yep.
consistent with other states and how it's handled, right?
Yep, the consumption-based portion for the electricity sector was, again, one of those things that was established very early on in terms of scoping out emissions and understanding our impact, right? Like, we drive that electricity use. We want to know the emissions associated with it so we can design policies to maybe reduce the emissions associated with that power. If we didn't include that inventory, that might not be something that policies that we would put in place for it. Like for example, right now Oregon has clean energy targets for our two largest investor-owned utilities, PGE and PacifiCorp, and that's all based on this inventory scope and the emissions associated with the power they provide to us. So that's kind of one way of the scoping of the inventory leading to policies that we have here, which is important consideration for the work you all are going to be doing as well, right? What do we scope? What's in, what's out? How does that inform what we ultimately do? I have listed the greenhouse gases that are included in the sector-based inventory, and I'll just flag what's not in here is biogenic CO2. And there are a couple reasons for that. One of those is that it's traditionally accounted for in the land use change. So if you look at the federal inventory, that's where you'll see it. And the approach there is a carbon flux. So it's a net. And so if we were to say include biogenic CO2 in our energy sectors, there would be a double counting component there. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason, as I described earlier, is, we want to look at strategies and approaches for our natural working lands differently than we do for these other anthropogenic economic sectors. So keeping them separate helps us kind of better inform those strategies. And then there are some limitations for how Oregon can regulate emissions from biogenic energy sources. So because this sector-based inventory informs some of those policies and programs, although we have the data associated with it, when we do the inventory and look at our goals, we don't include that biogenic CO2.
Elizabeth, could you please quickly give examples of biogenic CO2?
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, yep. Sorry, I didn't see that. So a biogenic CO2 is going to be carbon dioxide that comes from a biomass derived fuel. So that might be if you're combusting like a wood or wood waste material, the CO2 from that would be considered biogenic, part of the natural carbon cycle, and it would be part of a flux inventory that you would look at. There's other like beyond wood waste, you could say like a biodiesel, an ethanol product, like all of those fuel types that are derived from biomass, essentially. Is that helpful, or is there, that's pretty high level, but that kind of.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
The gist of it. So in terms of data sources, Oregon has kind of two main data sources for our greenhouse gas inventory. We compile the sector-based inventory from 1990 all the way through the current year. And then for the most recent years, so starting in 2010, Oregon established a greenhouse gas reporting program. And so that is currently about 80% of our inventory is state level data. And I can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then prior to that year, we currently use an EPA model called the State Inventory Tool. And that's for years prior to where we have state level reported data. It is a variety of different approaches, like some of it is disaggregated national inventory data. Some of it is using state level activity data. So we'll go in and we'll pull state level data and put it into the tool and model it out. And then I would also share in particular for the agriculture sector, all the way through our data set, because we don't have reported data, it's modeled. And it is modeled in different ways, like when we have activity available, like say we're looking at livestock counts of different animal types, like we'll try and input that into our tool to make it more Oregon specific, but it is all kind of modeled in that space versus reported in some of the others. And am I missing any questions as we're going through, or is it just discussion? I'll wait. To talk a little bit more about data sources for the reporting program, because I think that's helpful context for as you guys think through your data sources and the importance of having really high quality data that you can have now and moving into the future, so you can track your progress, so you can repeat the work that you're doing. So we have kind of four main regulated entities that report to Oregon DEQ. The first of those is our air contamination sources, or industrial facilities with permits. We have a little over 200 of those. We also collect data from all of the fuel suppliers, so folks that are bringing in your gasoline or your diesel, your aviation fuels, bring it into Oregon for use in Oregon. We quantify emissions associated with that. We also have information about all of our natural gas that's being used in the state. And then, as I mentioned before, the electricity sector, to really understand that emissions associated with consumption, we require reporting from our electricity supplier. So those are our IOUs, our COUs. So we have quite a bit of folks that have been reporting to us over the years. And we use that data in a variety of different ways. But one feature that we have for that data is that a large portion of it is actually third-party verified. So we have a high degree of certainty with the data. It hasn't always been that way. That the verification component is about 3 years old now, but it gives us an additional level of certainty with the emissions data that we're providing, which is really essential because we use it in a lot of different ways. It doesn't just show up in our inventory, but we're able to use it for like our new climate protection program. We've provided it to the Oregon Climate Action Committee over the years. We do a lot of like just data requests for general public or legislature. And then in some of our clean energy targets and clean fuels program. And I think the benefit to that is that the data used in our inventory also being used in our programs, policies, means that we're kind of aligning all of that using the same accounting and information, which is useful for, any comparisons that we want to do, or at least understanding if there are discrepancies, being really informed and knowledgeable about that when we talk about emissions. So here is our latest high-level greenhouse gas inventory. This is 1990 through 2023, so you can kind of see our trend here. We do every time we update the inventory, we go back and update historic years for best available practices. So if there are some improvements to emission factors or better understanding of how greenhouse gases are impacting the atmosphere, like for example, methane sometimes we've learned is more potent than we originally thought when we started doing inventories. We'll update the inventory to reflect those changes. So it isn't always the same numbers year after year. It can look a little bit different. We updated, I think it's about a 2-year cycle. It really depends on staff availability when it comes to making sure that we can get this updated as needed. And you can kind of see the trends here. And also just like kind of the major sectors that contribute to emissions. Largely, when we look at emissions from this scope, transportation is by far the greatest source of emissions. We're seeing some movement in that, largely due to seeing some more renewable diesel in the state, which is exciting and very, very new. And then when you slice the inventory this way, you see that residential and commercial is a very large portion. What's happening there is we're seeing emissions associated with electricity use, and then also emissions associated with natural gas or fuel combustion. So if we were to kind of pull those pieces out, the residential and commercial would look a lot smaller, and you would be looking at things like waste. So this is high level, and I think that I only have one other slide here. What I would say is we have more data sets available, and I'll show you a little bit of that at the end. But when we look at our sectors, what's largely in the transportation sector is fuel combustion related to on-road and non-road use. So that includes passenger vehicles, but it also includes like construction equipment or your farm equipment in that transportation sector there. And we're really looking at energy use, right? In our industrial sector, we're going to see a large portion of stationary combustion, electricity use, but kind of a unique feature there is emissions related to manufacturing. So you might have non-CO2 emissions related to producing. We have a cement manufacturing. We do a lot of pulp and paper here in Oregon. We do semiconductor manufacturing. So that all shows up with our industrial slice of the pie. In residential and commercial, we're looking at things like home heating, electricity use. We also see waste emissions, and then a growing space is this sort of refrigerant, coolant, high global warming potentials, right? As people start turning on their air conditioners and that type of thing, we're seeing that space grow as well. And then the agriculture sector, this is where it's not energy use that fits into there. That's up above in some of these other sectors, but like enteric fermentation, soil management, manure management, those things do show up. So those are like kind of the pieces that from more of the natural working lands perspective that fall into this inventory.
Elizabeth,
Yep.
It does not include all aspects of soil management. It's really nutrient application,
Yeah.
fertilizer application.
Yes.
the opportunities for sequestration in soil management are not included in this
Yeah,
inventory.
I think that's, yeah, and maybe that's like I use that blanket term unintentionally, but I do. So what I did want to share is we do have more detailed data in terms of what is fitting into those categories. And certainly if you needed me to dig down into the assumptions and things like that, we have all the background materials to be able to say, okay, we really want to know where these manure management assumptions came from. And we can go back and say, well, you know, these were federal assumptions, or these were state level assumptions, or we can talk through those. So we have, and I can put the link in the chat. Right now, this is where our latest inventory is, and we have some like a data viewer that you can kind of look through and play with it to get a little more familiar with the data. And then certainly we would be supporting all of your all's work any way we can in terms of additional data requests. So I think that is my last slide there.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to like offer. Are you able to stay online here with us for a little while?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I
that's
can
great. Because I think this group and lots of great questions in the chat and very focused on, of course, as they would be forestry and agriculture and kind of how, and you started hitting on that, which is fabulous, and kind of starting to explain what is and is not included and what DEQ already tracks. And I think if we could keep recording the questions in the chat, but invite Jason to go through natural working lands inventory basics, and then you can kind of both field questions.
Yeah.
I think that might be the best way to get everyone the information and then kind of have discussion about that. Thank you for all of this information. I think we really did want to make sure that folks knew that there's been an effort in Oregon going on for a little while, and that we do cross or overlap or touch, so we'll be coordinating with each other. And Jason, would you like to share your screen and present on the basics?
Yes, I first, before I start on that, though, I'd like to give Amy and Alan a potential chance to introduce themselves if they are still on the line and maybe talk about their role in all of this, but I'm happy to keep going if we're just trying to roll for time.
Thanks, Jason. We just wanted to take a few minutes just so you understand who we are, why we're on this call. You might see our faces. So I'm Amy Slusher. I lead the climate action team here at the Oregon Department of Energy. So nice to see everybody. And I think Alan is still on the line and might want to pop in and introduce himself too.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Zelenka. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning and Innovation, which has 4 sections in it. The climate section, which Amy, Jason, and Liz are in, but also a section on energy efficiency and a section on codes and standards and a section on technology and policy, which is the group that's leading up the state energy strategy, which some of you may have heard about that we're in process of doing. So never dull moment in P&I. We're very diverse, but we do a heck of a lot of good work. And we're also responsible for the biennial energy report and the biennial zero emission vehicle report, among a billion other reports that we do. And by the way, I used to be on the Global Warming Commission, as it was known then, in 2015 to 2018, and I left the commission to take my job here. So thank you all for participating. This is an important group, and your input's going to be valued as we move forward with all these different projects. One last point is when I was on the commission in 2015 and I did a report to the legislature, one of the senators asked, so this is all great, but how are you going to do all this? And I said, well, that's a very good question. And there's the rub, Senator. The entire state of Oregon has 1/3 of Jess Shipley's time, who was sitting next to me working on this stuff at the time. And that was the dedicated staff at Odo. And now we have the 4 people that are here, plus Jeff, who's working with the commission and other climate change things. And the workload that we have coming through this year of 2025 is well over $1 million in consultant fees. So it's a good time to be on the commission, a good time to work on natural climate solutions. And so thank you again for all your participation and your future hard work and homework that you'll probably have to do.
Thank you, Ellen. I had introduced you guys for you. I apologize. You should have introduced yourselves. Oversight. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so thank you, Alan and Amy, for that, and thank you for everyone speaking before this as well. It helps make my job a little easier, especially with the explanation of what was in the sector-based inventory. So a quick introduction about myself. So I was hired here at the same time Liz was back in October of last year. I come from a pretty purely research background, coming, from the very micro scale of studying processes with my physics degree to studying geology in a second degree, then a biogeochemistry master's degree, and an environmental life sciences PhD. So if you have questions from the micro to the macro, I may be able to answer them. But the problem with that is that I am not legally trained at all. So I am a little nervous about using terms that maybe conflict with statutory language, but I'll do my best to not use improper terminology such as for biogenic CO2, which I just learned about. But anyway, let me go ahead and share my screen here, and then we will get rolling on some basics of the inventory. I will also say we have taken quite a bit of time with answering questions and stuff so far. So Liz or whoever, if you need to stop me in order to move on, certainly do not hesitate. So again, yeah, just a quick primer on natural and working lands inventories. And if we have time, I'll get a little into the Oregon's Natural and Working Lands Inventory RFP. But I will say if we do not get into that second portion, to your preference, you're free to free to email either Liz or myself or Amy or Alan, and we're happy to provide additional resources. So just a quick inventory context. In 2023, the Oregon State Legislature passed HB 3409, which acts on the natural and working lands proposal adopted by the Commission. The bill directs ODO and the Commission, along with the Interagency Working Group, which is all of you, to develop a natural and working lands net biological carbon sequestration and storage inventory by December 1st of 2025, but to be repeated every even-numbered year. So a quick primer, and again, these are not the legal definitions or the statutory definitions. Those can be found in HB 3409. I'm just going to speak broadly and kind of educationally about it, but feel free to ask questions or clarifications in the chat or follow up with us. So natural working lands are broadly different types of land cover types. So forest, grassland, shrubland, cropland, rangeland, wetlands, both coastal as well as inland, urban green spaces, and other lands which are sparsely vegetated ones like desert, bare soil, permanently under ice cover, things like that. They cover all forms of land ownership, so both publicly or privately owned and managed, including by tribes. They provide a number of benefits, such as food, fuel, fiber, tourism, and other benefits, but critically also sequester and store carbon. And again, just a quick reminder, this is not the legal definition. Please find that in HB 3409. So where is carbon stored on natural and working lands? We have four major pools that we're going to be looking at in the inventory. The first one is this above ground live biomass, which is everything in trees, shrubs, grasses, all the live portions of the landscape that are mostly plant matter that we're concerned with. We have above ground dead biomass, which is the stuff that falls off of the plant matter. So branches, logs, wood, leaves, things like that. We have below ground live biomass, which mostly refers to root matter. And then we have soil carbon, which can come from multiple sources, including decayed roots, accumulated dead biomass that gets buried over time. So how does carbon move through natural and working lands? Primarily, we have the sun driving this and plants producing net primary production, which is a broad process of carbon dioxide sequestration in the forms of glucose and ultimately cellulose and starches and things like that in the biomass on the planet. That biomass, again, can get incorporated into soil carbon through disintegration, root matter, things of that nature. But then there's also a lot of sources of emissions from natural working lands or the plant matter and disturbances to plant matter on natural working lands, and also soil carbon as well. So on the left side here, we have burns and wildfires, which tend to produce carbon dioxide and methane We have aerobic decomposition of organic matter, which produces carbon dioxide primarily. We have soil respiration, which is usually methanogens, bacteria, other microorganisms that promote soil respiration in the form of carbon dioxide emissions. And then we have anaerobic decomposition, which will happen when the land is waterlogged, either temporarily or permanently, such as in the form of these wetland areas on the side here. And that largely produces methane. So how much carbon is stored in natural working lands? And so to be clear, these are not meant to be the gospel truth about how much each of these different ecosystems produces. There's a number of factors that can affect how much carbon is stored in natural working lands, as you just saw in those processes. But that's also part of the work we're doing with this inventory and the activities and metrics RFP that we're following this with. But broadly, you have these two areas of concern: this above ground biomass, which again is plants and other organic matter. And forests tend to store a lot of carbon, wetlands kind of store an intermediate amount of carbon, and croplands tend to store the least amount of carbon most. But again, there's a lot of wiggle room in that, such as croplands that have, or that are actually like orchards, may end up storing more carbon than, say, wheat fields and things of that sort. But it's actually soil that holds the most carbon in natural working lands. You can see here that even though cropland has a relatively low above ground biomass, it actually has a, depending on, again, activities, you may have quite a big soil pool in croplands, but forest tends to outsize croplands, and wetlands actually end up holding quite a bit of carbon compared to the other land cover types that we are looking at in natural working lands. Globally, if you're curious, soil accounts for about 64% of total global carbon. The atmosphere is about 21% of total carbon, or about 1/3 of the amount that soil carbon contains. And above ground biomass is about 14.5% of total carbon, or just a little less than 1/4 of the amount included in soil carbon. So natural working lands are critical for achieving state, national, and international climate goals. That's part of the reason we care about all this. So according to the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, there is no viable pathway to net zero emissions by 2050 without carbon removal. And natural working lands are critical for removing carbon from the atmosphere. The sustainable management of natural working lands can increase net carbon removal by up to 30% of global carbon reduction needed to limit warming to 1.5 degrees C. And that finding was originally published in Rowe and others in 2019, but it's been confirmed and qualified, and it's received plenty of backing in the years since then in academic publications. So a lack of attention to natural and working lands can result in the landscape carbon emissions. Overall, natural working land contributions to the U.S. carbon balance can be seen here, where on the left side, or on the y-axis, we have emissions reported in million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot to spend time on explaining what a carbon dioxide equivalent is. So there's a lot of expertise in this room, so I won't belabor it, but just in case, and so we're on the same page, a carbon dioxide equivalent is sort of a mathematical way of making different types of carbon emissions equal in reporting based on the relative warming that they may cause compared to carbon dioxide. So CO2 has a carbon dioxide equivalent of 1 because it's equivalent to carbon dioxide. And a carbon compound like methane has about 25 times the, or it represents about 25 CO2 equivalents, depending on the time frame that you're looking at. But anyway, so now that I've got that clarified, so you can see here from all the different sectors, the only one that actually results in negative emissions or sequestration is land use change, and forestry, which actually represents a net sink compared to all other sectors examined here. And so U.S. greenhouse gas emissions were, I think, like 6.3 billion, I think, on that last year, which is 2022 or 2023. But sequestration represents about 854 or negative 854 million, or about 13% of U.S. emissions currently. And again, it can studies have shown that it could potentially be boosted up to 30% of global emissions, or some very high number of U.S. emissions as well. So Do we have time? I can go into Oregon's National Working Lands Inventory. I just want to be conscious of that.
I think the slide would be helpful,
Okay.
and then we'll take questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Oregon's Natural and Working Lands Inventory, you know, bringing it down from the broad description of what inventories are. So we plan for Oregon's Natural Working Lands Inventory to tell us how much carbon is sequestered in the land, and it will allow us to track that change in carbon sequestered in the land over time. And so again, this is carbon sequestered on all of those different land types we looked at previously, and above ground, below ground, and soil pools. And we will have a contractor come back to us with emissions factors for each of the land types, and critically for that are appropriate for all regions of the state of Oregon, as opposed to just using national recommendations for emission factors and things like that. So we're trying to bring it down, or bring down the analysis to the appropriate scale and ecosystems that are here in Oregon. It'll cover emissions and sequestration that occur as land cover types change. So for example, forest developed usually results in carbon emissions, but if you change from developed to forest, you tend to sequester carbon. We'll also cover wildfire and burns, which are a major source of carbon emissions from the landscape, but also are something that we use to potentially manage for even worse wildfires. So anyway, I'm trying to get numbers on that so we can start thinking about policy related to forestry, grasslands, shrublands, et cetera. And we're also going to look at maturation of land covers. So thinking about how much carbon is stored when you leave forests as forest and let them age, both into middle and old age. And again, big caveat here, even though it's in parentheses, is we will be able to do this where data are available. We have learned from reading through a lot of other states' natural working lands inventories, and through discussion with other professionals like California's Air Resources Board and also the U.S. Climate Alliance, that there are some real data availability needs. So that is also part of the work of the natural working lands inventory. In addition to figuring out where we're at, it's figuring out how we need to get where we want to be. So with that, I will open for questions.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Jen, will you stop recording, please? Great. Slides unshared. Okay, great.